features about the Juno and a lot of Rolands is they have this thing called a D-beam. If you look right here, you see these little connectors, these little bulbs here. Basically, that's an infrared controller, and you can set up to do different things. You can have it control your volume. You can have it make weird sounds. Right? You can have it. That's pretty loud. You can have it set up to do whatever different parameters you have all over the keyboard. You can set it up to do that. In this case, I just have a volume pedal. So it's the kind of equivalent of how a guitar player would use a volume pedal with their foot. Instead of a foot, I use my hand. Just because I think a lot of times as keyboard players, we're so used to having our foot do sustain stuff. So, so I just find it easy to use a hand. See, without me doing it, right? But if I put my hand over it and press and play, there's nothing there, right? Because I put my hand over it, that's all the way off, volume off. As I raise my hand, the volume increases and decreases. And so that gives me the ability just to do a different expression with that. And I use my modulation wheel for pitch and vibrato and that kind of thing. Well, part of how this works as well is the other way I get all the effects on there is through this guy down here. So you go down here. It's basically just an old Pod XT Live, which they're great. You know, they're made for guitar. They're based on the amp modeler. The idea behind it is that instead of running your guitar through an amp on stage and miking it up, you can run it through here. It models different amps and microphones placement. And they have a dynamic microphone and condenser microphone you can choose from. And you use this instead of an amplifier on stage. You can decrease your stage volume, or you can just have more control over it in the studio or whatever. So I came with this idea a long time ago when I realized I wanted a Rhodes. Right? So I wanted a Rhodes sound, so if I just kind of bypass everything, there's my Rhodes sound, right? Well, I thought well, if you have a real Rhodes, what do? Right? A real Rhodes you're going to plug in through an amplifier. Either like some of the old Fender Rhodes that came out in the 70s that have amplifier underneath, or the keyboard sits on top of an amplifier, or you would actually, like in a lot of studios, they would plug it into a guitar amplifier. So same thing. So on here, I chose an amp, and kind of gives it like a little more sense of running the Rhodes through a real amplifier. So now it's got a little grit to it. A little growl to it now. Right? So you can get that little Beatles thing, right? Well, then the same thing came to me. It's like, well, why not do like what a lot of guitar players do? And they use the delay. They use a delay to get kind of that edge from U2, edge, the guitar player, get that effect. So I did the same thing. Let's just use a delay, and I can do that kind of same vibe. So the delay is just dotted eighth notes. So when you hit it, if I just hit it, you hear it right? If without the delay, all I'm playing is this, just eighth notes. But with the delay, it sounds like 16th notes. And it makes for a really cool effect when you're playing with a band. And the cool thing about the Pod is I can tap into tempo. So as the band's playing, if they're going a little slower, right, drummer's playing, I don't have to worry about the tempo. I just kind of go with whatever the drummer's playing. Now I got a slower tempo. And if the drummer's not not playing to a click and he starts speeding up, you know, and I could just tap into new tempo. That's how you hear kind of a lot of those cool effects, like a certain song we know. So we got that little more tempo, about 110 there. So it's just a real fun thing to do. So using the pod in conjunction with this, you know, and the cool thing is it kind of warms up, also it warms up your pad sounds. So it's like running your keyboard through a guitar amp. Gives it a little more warmer sounds. I could still do the pads on it. I could still play, if I wanted to play just the piano, you know, I can still do that. I might turn the amp off though. Right. And if I go back to my Rhodes, turn the amp back on to get that more dirty sound. And of course I have other patches. You know, I have a patch that has a little bit of a less delay. See? So delay's still there. And then of course I got my washy wash pad, so when I get to do the expression stuff, my real washy pad. So if I play it without, it's a long delay and tons of verbs, so it just gives it that washy sound, so I can do all that fun, cool stuff. So that's what I do. So I get, like I said, usually after every concert, people are like, "What are you doing with your hand?" And I hear all these delays, and that's all. It's real simple. Just this Roland Juno Gi, which I love, and running it through a pod, XT Live, which are you can now pod. Of course, now pod makes the HD 500 and 300, and get even more options, use more amps, and but I still use the old XT Live because it still works great for me. So that's it.